Boris Johnson has savaged Emmanuel Macron after a rally in Paris the ex-PM was due to speak at was banned at the last minute by the French government.
We heard all sorts of nonsense, did we not? We heard that last night I was told that the problem was that it was going to be too hot and that the police had decided it was dangerous for us to assemble in the heat. How pathetic. Would we be put off by a bit of heat? Of course not. Of course not. But de chaleur, no problem, no problem. And then we had this cock and bull story, this absolute nonsense from the authorities this morning that there was some threat of a counter-demonstration or violence or argy-bargy of something. What absolute nonsense. And I think it was brilliantly analysed and dismissed by our French colleague. Look, we know the truth. We know why we've been prevented from having a proper rally of the kind that was 2 months in preparation by Madame Rajavi and others, and that was because the French Foreign Ministry got on the blower, as we say, to Mr. Aragchi in Tehran, and they decided that on the whole it would be more politic not to allow the Iranian opposition to assemble in that way. And in so doing, what has happened, be in no doubt, is that the French government, and forgive me, I love Paris, and I agree with every word that Charles said about Paris, but the French government has bowed cravenly, has capitulated to a regime in Tehran that tortures and kills its opponents on an industrial scale, that authorises the murder of young women simply for wearing headgear, head coverings of a kind they do not approve of, and that for that, by the way, has massacred 40,000 innocent people in January of this year, and for half a century has promoted across the entire Middle East an agenda of terror and mayhem, and indeed exported that around the world in the name of a crazed theocratic ideology which you, I hope, are going to expel. And it is wrong. And I think, and by the way, I think you will. Listening to the speeches, listening to what I've heard from Madam, I think you will. I think you're going to succeed. I know it. It would be wrong. It would be wrong at any time to suppress a legitimate, principled demonstration of political opposition to the regime in Tehran. It'd be wrong at any time. You know, people should be entitled to say what they think about the IRGC and all the sinister apparatus of repression that there is. But it is doubly wrong to do it now, at this absolutely critical moment, because we need to hear the voices, the Iranian voices of opposition to that regime in Tehran. And the Iranians need to hear your voices. People in Iran need to know that they have your support. Because Iran stands at a crossroads, and as Charles has rightly said, you know, after 3 months of bombardment, 3 months of war, well, we've proved that tomahawks alone cannot secure freedom for the people of Iran. We proved that it can't be delivered by the Pentagon, and change must come from within.
The rally, organised by the National Council of Resistance of Iran, was banned after the French government claimed it had evidence of a credible bomb plot by the Islamic regime. Organisers told GB News they had seen no evidence and instead claimed the protest was banned hours after a phone call between the French Foreign Minister and his Iranian counterpart.
The experience of the past 4 decades clearly show that appeasement doesn't work. At the same time, now we can see quite evidently that a foreign war is not a solution. Look, the Iranian crisis has only one solution, a regime change, but by the Iranian people and organized resistance. And that's the message that these people have been sending today. And that was the message by 100,000 people in support of Madame Mariam Rajavi and her provisional government based on her 10-point plan. And as I said, if one wants to see who the regime sees as the real challenger, I think that speaks volumes.
But the French state has chosen their side, haven't they? They're not your ally now.
Well, I would say Europeans and Westerners as a whole have to realize that making concessions to the regime is not going to work. It has not worked over the years. It's not going to work. It has made the situation even worse. It has exacerbated the crisis, I would say. So it's now time to totally change the mindset and see the reality about Iran for what it is.
And this ban came in the last minute. Obviously, people have come here today beforehand. What are the stipulations? So they said that these people are allowed to stay, but no more? What are the rules?
In the morning, we had more than 50,000 people who had already come in. These are people who came with more than 800 buses from all over Europe. And a lot of people had actually taken off before the ban was announced. So they were here anyways. And you see they have been chanting since very early hours of this morning, which clearly shows how, strong and firm in their belief is about, to stand for. But as I said, I think they have made the message very clear that they want a free and democratic Iran, a democratic republic. They reject both the monarchy and the theocracy, and they want a real democracy. And I think anyone who wanted to see how serious the resistance is had to look at their resolute.
Sometimes, having a common enemy can make you friends with someone. Do you not think that it makes more sense for the people who are pro-Pahlavi and people like you who are pro-democracy to join together in order to take down the regime?
You will find it very telling that the reason the Paris police cited to ban, obviously, this is their reasoning, was there's a serious threat against this gathering by the regime and also by the remnants of the monarchy, the Pahlavi people, who are threatening this place by terrorism. So that shows you the real function. So they are actually serving the regime's interest because they have been acting like an obstruction.
Were you presented with evidence for that?
Absolutely not. But this was in the ruling that the judge ruled, and I think that's a legal document. So I think that clearly shows the real function and impact of these people. That at the end of the day, they benefit the regime than anything else. And as I said, this is a very clear case in point. One thing very much combines the Iranian together, unites them. They reject any kind of dictatorship, both in terms of the previous dictatorship of the Pahlavi and also current theocracy. It's time for a true democracy in Iran. Look, Pahlavi's people ruled 57 years with a notorious secret police called Sawak, with pervasive corruption and nepotism, and the same with the mullahs. So it's time for a new chapter on Iran.
Organisers had claimed there were up to 100,000 due to attend the rally, though in reality the crowd numbered in the hundreds. It was heavily guarded by police, who clashed with protesters early in the day and made 20 arrests.
The rule of law should have prevailed here, and it didn't. And it's outrageous, really.
The French, though, are saying that there's a threat to human safety here. Do you believe that?
I have absolutely no signals that there was. They said the same thing 3 years ago, and then the judge asked them to prove that, to give him clues as to what they were talking about. They couldn't give any, none.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid it's the same this year. And it is just an excuse and quite probably a diplomatic action. Macron has been in touch with Iranians all week before signing the deal, sitting next to Donald Trump.
So is that a sign, though, that maybe the regime is more powerful than people think?
No, they put pressure on European and American diplomats that if so, then we will not sign the agreement. And then Donald Trump will have no way of getting out of this ridiculous war.
The NCRI is a coalition of dissident groups, led by the People's Mojahedin Organisation of Iran, known as the MEK. Previously prescribed as a terror group, a court ruled in 2008 the group should be removed from the terror list, saying the prescription was unlawful and without basis. They call for a democratic transition in Iran from within, standing against Donald Trump's intervention in Tehran, and are opposed to the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi. Ex-Defence Secretary Liam Fox told the NCRI conference, which went ahead in Paris but away from the rally, that Donald Trump's deal with the Islamic regime has changed little in terms of the threat the regime poses to global security.
And the West must learn that there can be no more reasoned with today or trusted today than at any time in the past 47 years. The wolf may lose its teeth, but it never loses its appetite. What has the effect been on the region that we see today? The attacks have caused enormous damage, thousands of people dead in Iran, Lebanon, Israel, and the Gulf Arab states, and millions displaced across the region. No part of the Middle East has escaped unscathed. Saudi oil refineries have been struck. US military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and Jordan have come under fire. Lebanon, already broken by years of economic collapse and political dysfunction, was consumed once more, with nearly 4,000 killed and over 12,000 wounded so far. The region that emerges from this war is not more stable than the one that entered it. Old alliances have been tested and some have been fractured. Iran's counterstrikes on the Arab Gulf states, some of whom had sought to deepen their relations with Iran, will leave Iran further isolated, not less. Both the United States and Iran have declared the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. But ominously, both Israel and Hezbollah seem to have different ideas. And what's been the effect on the wider world? This was never just a regional conflict. The moment Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, it became a crisis for every economy on earth. The International Energy Agency characterized it as the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, echoing the 1970s energy crisis through acute energy shortages, currency volatility, rising inflation, and heightened risks of stagflation and recession. No one can say this is not our conflict, because the consequences are yours. The reopening of the strait under the MOU offers relief, but markets are clear-eyed about the timeline. Energy disruptions of this magnitude do not reverse overnight. The world has been reminded brutally of its dependence on a narrow waterway, and Iran has seen what an easy weapon they can muster. They must be told now, unequivocally, no right of blockade, no right to fees, no breaking of international maritime law, and the international community must be willing to face down the challenge by international force if necessary, or face anarchy on the high seas. And what about Iran's ballistic missile arsenal? Before the war, President Trump rightly aimed to obliterate Iran's ballistic missile capability, but the reality is more ambiguous. Critically, the MOU offers no treatment of Iran's ballistic missile arsenal whatsoever, leaving Iran's neighbours to contend with a threat that remains very much alive. And the missile question is deferred to the 60-day final negotiations, where it will be literally the most explosive issue on the table. But perhaps the most glaring omission in the MOU is the complete silence on Iran's network of regional proxies. The Institute for the Study of War assessed that Iran will likely use its renewed economic access to reconstitute the axis of resistance during the 60-day negotiating period, and noting that Iran has already told Hezbollah that it will increase funding as soon as frozen assets are relaxed.
Opposition within Iran can be difficult to quantify. Many point to the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, who has clear support among the Iranian diaspora. He has been criticised, however, for his lack of action and leadership, and does not command Donald Trump's support. The NCRI argues Iranians support their vision for a democratic country. Led by Maryam Rajavi, the group touts their 10-point plan for a non-nuclear Iran, though whether they command popular support is unclear. Nick Dunning, GB News.